The massive crystalline chamber stretched endlessly into darkness, its walls carved from a single asteroid and suspended in the void between dying stars. Ambassador Jake Morrison stepped through the bioluminescent doorway, his footsteps echoing against the obsidian floor that seemed to absorb light itself. The Galactic Council's Judgment Hall housed representatives from over 600 species, their forms ranging from tentacled beings floating in pressurized tanks to crystalline entities humming with electromagnetic energy. At the center of this cosmic theater sat the Council of Nine, ancient beings whose very presence made the air thick with power. Their leader, Supreme Chancellor Krell, possessed a form that defied easy description, part energy, part matter, existing in dimensions that human eyes struggled to perceive. Human of Terra. Krell's voice resonated through both sound and thought. You stand before this council accused of violating the Galactic Expansion Protocols. Section 1247. Your species has been detected establishing unauthorized settlements beyond your designated solar system. The assembled aliens murmured in languages that created a symphony of clicks, whistles, and harmonic vibrations. Many had traveled vast distances to witness what they expected would be humanity's final judgment. The consensus was clear: exile to the galactic rim, or complete technological regression, awaited the young species that dared to challenge ancient law. Jake remained perfectly still, his hands clasped behind his back. When he finally spoke, his voice carried clearly through the vast space without any visible amplification device. Honored Council, Jake began, his tone respectful but unwavering. We appreciate this opportunity to address these concerns directly. Council Member Thaxos, a serpentine being whose scales shifted through the color spectrum, leaned forward with obvious disdain. Concerns? Human. Your species has existed in galactic society for barely 150 years. You are classified as a Level 2 civilization, yet our monitoring systems have detected energy signatures consistent with Level 5 technology, emanating from prohibited sectors. Behind Jake, Dr. Lisa Chen stepped forward, her dark eyes reflecting the chamber's ethereal lighting. Council Member Thaxos, with respect, your classification systems may require updating. Humanity has been diligent in our development since joining the galactic community. A ripple of what might have been laughter passed through the assembled delegates. The very idea that humans could challenge galactic surveillance technology seemed absurd. When the Council first encountered humanity, they were barely capable of interplanetary travel. Admiral Rebecca Torres caught something the others missed. As Dr. Chen spoke, monitoring systems throughout the chamber flickered for exactly 0.7 seconds. It was subtle, but Torres's enhanced neural implants registered every anomaly in the chamber's defensive grid. General Robert Hayes maintained his stoic expression, but his fingers tapped against his leg in a pattern that would have been meaningless to any observer, except the other humans present. They recognized it as tactical sign language developed during Earth's colonial expansion. The message was simple: countermeasures active. Begin Protocol Alpha. Chancellor Krell's massive form pulsed with barely contained energy. We have comprehensive records, humans. Unauthorized quantum drives, temporal research facilities, gravitational manipulation technology. These developments are forbidden to species below Level 6 classification. The penalty for violation is severe. Jake allowed himself the faintest smile. Chancellor, I believe there may be some misunderstanding regarding humanity's actual classification level. We've been modest about our achievements. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop as Jake's words settled over the assembly. Council Member Veltar, whose crystalline form contained the power of a small star, spoke in harmonic tones that translated through the chamber's systems. Modest? Your species was cataloged and classified according to standard galactic protocols. Your technological progression has been monitored continuously since first contact. There is no possibility of error in our assessment. Dr. Chen exchanged a glance with Admiral Torres. The moment had arrived. Respected Council, Lisa said, producing a device no larger than a coin from her uniform pocket. Perhaps we should discuss what your monitoring stations haven't been able to detect. She activated the device. Every monitoring system in the chamber went dark simultaneously. The omnipresent hum of surveillance equipment fell silent. Emergency lighting flickered on as backup systems struggled to compensate for the sudden loss of primary sensors. In the stunned silence that followed, Jake Morrison's voice carried a new edge of authority that made several alien representatives physically recoil. Chancellor Krell, members of the Galactic Council, what you're experiencing is a localized demonstration of humanity's actual technological capabilities. For the past century and a half, we have been preparing for this moment. Every treaty signed, every diplomatic mission, every seemingly innocent cultural exchange has been part of a much larger design. The emergency lighting stabilized, casting eerie shadows across the vast chamber. Admiral Torres stepped forward, her uniform bearing insignia that several military-minded aliens were beginning to recognize as far more sophisticated than previously catalogued. You see, we learned something crucial during our first decades of galactic contact, she said calmly. This council maintains order through technological superiority and the threat of overwhelming force. But what happens when that superiority is questioned? As if summoned by her words, the chamber's main display screens flickered to life, showing real-time footage from across the galaxy. Human vessels appeared on screen, our sleek, powerful ships bearing no resemblance to anything in the galactic database. These ships were emerging from what appeared to be empty space throughout previously unexplored sectors. The images showed human colonies on worlds the Council had deemed uninhabitable, massive construction projects in the void between star systems, and technology that made even the Council's most advanced equipment appear primitive by comparison. But it was the final image that sent waves of panic through the assembled delegates. Earth itself, no longer the simple blue world in an isolated solar system, but surrounded by a complex network of installations that seemed to bend space-time around them. General Hayes spoke for the first time since entering the chamber, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. For 150 years, humanity has been building, learning, and preparing. While you watched us through your monitoring stations, we were watching you through methods you never imagined possible. Chancellor Krell's energy form fluctuated wildly. This is impossible. No species could achieve such advancement while under galactic observation. Our systems are absolute, our surveillance perfect. Jake walked slowly toward the tribunal, his movement causing several of the chamber's defensive systems to activate, and then immediately shut down, as if they couldn't decide whether he represented a threat. As he moved, the assembled delegates noticed something that chilled them. The most secure location in galactic space couldn't seem to see him properly. "Chancellor," Jake said, coming to a stop directly before the Council of Nine, "you've made the same mistake that has doomed every empire throughout galactic history. You assumed that your technology, your methods, your very way of thinking represented the absolute limits of possibility." He gestured to his companions, each of whom was now openly displaying equipment that defied galactic understanding of physics. "Humanity didn't violate your laws, honored Council. We simply operated beyond your ability to detect violations. The question now becomes, what are you prepared to do about it?" The chamber fell into absolute silence as the implications of humanity's revelation settled over the assembled representatives. In the space of minutes, the galactic balance of power had shifted so dramatically that many species were already calculating whether their allegiances needed immediate adjustment. But this was only the beginning. As Admiral Torres activated another device, the viewing screens around the chamber began displaying tactical readouts that made it clear humanity hadn't just been preparing defenses, they had been preparing for war. The viewing screens surrounding the Judgment Chamber displayed a sight that made even the most veteran galactic military commanders struggle to comprehend what they were seeing. Stellar cartography maps revealed the truth that humanity had kept hidden for over a century. They hadn't just expanded beyond their solar system, they had been quietly building the largest military infrastructure the galaxy had ever witnessed. Admiral Torres manipulated her wrist device, and the display zoomed in on what galactic databases had always classified as uninhabitable asteroid fields throughout human space. The asteroids began to unfold like metallic flowers, revealing massive weapons platforms and shipyards that had been disguised through technology that bent light itself around their structures. Council member Thaxos's scales shifted to deep crimson, a color indicating extreme distress in his species. "These installations, they've been there for decades. Our long-range sensors detected nothing but cosmic debris and background radiation." "Actually, over a century," corrected Dr. Chen, stepping forward with a tablet displaying construction timelines. "The first hidden shipyard achieved operational status in 2387. just 28 years after first contact with the Galactic Council. We've been rather productive since then. General Hayes activated a holographic interface that materialized before him, showing real-time tactical data that made several alien military advisors physically step backward. 237 major shipyards, 5,000 automated defense platforms, and manufacturing facilities capable of producing what you would classify as Level 8 technology. The term Level 8 sent a shockwave through the chamber. According to galactic classification standards, Level 8 technology was theoretical, the kind of advancement that civilizations dreamed of achieving after millions of years of development. The fact that humanity claimed to be producing it was either the most audacious deception in galactic history or the most terrifying revelation. Chancellor Krell's energy form pulsed with rapid fluctuations. Level 8 technology requires resources that don't exist in your sector of space. The rare elements, the energy requirements, the computational matrices needed for such advancement are simply not available in the Outer Rim territories. Jake Morrison smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, his expression carried something distinctly predatory. You're absolutely correct, Chancellor. Those resources don't exist in our officially designated sector of space. They exist in your sectors of space. The implications of his words created a tangible shift in the chamber's atmosphere. Dr. Chen manipulated her tablet, and the displays showed mining operations throughout the galaxy, operations that had been attributed to various alien corporations and government entities for decades. Shell companies, Lisa explained matter-of-factly, established through carefully cultivated relationships with species who believed they were dealing with minor human trading concerns. We've been harvesting rare elements from 112 systems across the galaxy. The mining rights were purchased legally. The operations conducted openly. You simply never realized who was actually behind them. Admiral Torres pulled up another display showing cargo manifests and shipping records spanning the past century. 67% of the rare element trade in the Eastern Spiral has been controlled by human interest for the past 40 years. The profits have been substantial. The revelation struck the assembled delegates like a physical force. Humanity hadn't just been secretly developing advanced technology. They had been systematically infiltrating and manipulating galactic commerce to fund their military expansion. Species that had considered themselves economically dominant suddenly realized they had been unknowing junior partners in humanity's grand design. Council member. Feltar's crystalline form resonated with rapid energy pulses. The economic implications alone, if what you claim is accurate, humanity has been the primary economic force in the galaxy for decades, while appearing to be a minor player confined to frontier territories. The appearance was entirely intentional, General Hayes confirmed. Military doctrine has evolved considerably since our species first achieved interstellar capability. We learned early that the most effective conquest doesn't announce itself until victory is already assured. The word conquest sent ripples of alarm throughout the chamber. Several smaller species representatives were already signaling frantically to their home systems, while the larger powers were calculating whether immediate military action remained viable. But Jake wasn't finished revealing humanity's preparations. He gestured to Dr. Chen, who activated another program on her tablet. The chamber's displays now showed detailed intelligence profiles, not of human activities, but of every major alien civilization present in the chamber. For 150 years, humanity has been conducting the most comprehensive intelligence operation in galactic history, Lisa announced. Every diplomat you've hosted, every cultural exchange program, every joint scientific expedition provided us with detailed information about your military capabilities, political structures, and social vulnerabilities. The profiles were devastatingly thorough. Military command structures, fleet compositions, defensive strategies, economic weaknesses, even personal information about individual leaders and their psychological profiles. It was clear that humanity had been preparing for potential conflict with surgical precision. But the most shocking revelation came when Admiral Torres activated the final display sequence. The screen showed current positions of human vessels throughout the galaxy, vessels that had been invisible to galactic sensors until this moment. The ships you're observing represent approximately 15% of humanity's active fleet, she announced calmly. They have been positioned at strategic points throughout galactic space for the past 2 years. Every major trade route, every military installation, every population center of strategic importance has been quietly surrounded. The tactical implications were staggering. Humanity had effectively encircled the galaxy's power centers, while remaining completely undetected. It was a level of strategic planning that suggested not just advanced technology, but a fundamental understanding of galactic civilization that went far beyond what any species had achieved in recorded history. Chancellor Krell's voice carried a tremor that hadn't been present at the beginning of the session. You are describing a conspiracy that spans generations. The coordination required, the secrecy, the resources. No single species could achieve this level of preparation. You're absolutely correct, Jake agreed, his tone becoming more serious. No single species could achieve this alone. He paused, allowing the implications of that statement to settle before continuing, which brings us to the question of humanity's allies in this endeavor. The chamber fell silent as the assembled delegates realized that everything they thought they knew about galactic politics was about to be revealed as an elaborate illusion. The viewing screens began displaying new information: alliance agreements, mutual defense pacts, and cooperative arrangements that involved species the galactic community thought were working in completely different directions. Dr. Chen scrolled through her tablet, revealing document after document of secret agreements. The Veltar Confederation, officially neutral for the past century, has been quietly providing humanity with advanced computational technology. The Drac merchant guilds have been facilitating our economic expansion throughout the Outer Rim territories. The Zentari Science Consortium has been sharing research on quantum manipulation for nearly 50 years. Each revelation struck the assembled aliens like a physical blow. Species they had considered predictable, manageable, or even subordinate had been working together in a shadow network that now controlled vast portions of galactic civilization. But it was General Hayes's final statement that truly demonstrated the scope of humanity's preparation. The Galactic Council represents 18 major civilizations and governs approximately 70% of known space, he said, his voice carrying absolute authority. Humanity and our allies now control the remaining 30%, along with the infrastructure that supports your 70%. He activated his holographic interface one final time, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red areas indicated human-controlled territory, blue showed allied space, and green represented systems under direct human influence through economic or political means. The map was almost entirely red and blue. Distinguished beings, Jake Morrison said, addressing the chamber with the tone of someone delivering a final ultimatum. Humanity has not violated galactic law. We have simply rendered galactic law obsolete. As if to emphasize the point, communication systems throughout the chamber activated without authorization, broadcasting the session to every major population center in the galaxy. Humanity hadn't just revealed their preparations to the Council, they were announcing their emergence to every civilization. Simultaneously, the galaxy was about to learn that the balance of power had shifted so dramatically that the very concept of galactic government was about to be redefined entirely. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of humanity's revelation. But the magnificent chamber that had once symbolized ultimate authority now felt more like a trap. Emergency barriers had been activated around the speaking floor. Energy fields hummed with defensive frequencies, and every entrance was guarded by the Council's elite Praetorian units, beings whose combat capabilities were legendary throughout the galaxy. Yet despite these precautions, the four human representatives sat calmly in the center of the chamber, completely unrestrained and showing no signs of concern about the massive military response surrounding them. If anything, they appeared almost bored by the elaborate security measures. Supreme Chancellor Krell had summoned representatives from every major civilization, and the chamber now hosted over 900 delegates from across the galaxy. The tension was so thick it seemed to have physical weight, with species that had been allies for millennia, eyeing each other with new suspicion, wondering who else might be secretly aligned with humanity. Before we proceed, Chancellor Krell announced, his psychic voice carrying undertones of barely controlled rage, I want it clearly understood that this council will not be intimidated by elaborate deceptions or technological demonstrations. Humanity will face judgment for their violations of galactic law. Admiral Torres looked up from the small device she had been casually examining, her expression one of mild curiosity. "Chancellor, with respect, you seem to be operating under the assumption that this council still has the authority to judge humanity." The statement sent shockwaves through the assembled delegates. It wasn't just the audacity of the words, it was the complete lack of fear or concern in the Admiral's voice. She spoke as if she were discussing weather patterns rather than challenging the most powerful governing body in galactic history. General Hayes stood slowly, his movements deliberate and measured. "Perhaps it would be helpful to clarify the current military situation for those who haven't yet received updated intelligence reports from their home systems." He activated his holographic interface, and despite the chamber's enhanced security systems, the display manifested without any interference whatsoever. The three-dimensional tactical map that appeared showed the galaxy in real time, with human vessels marked in blue and council forces in red. The situation was far worse than anyone had imagined. As of 37 minutes ago, Hayes announced, human vessels have achieved tactical control of 63 major trade routes, 24 primary communication hubs, and 12 of the Council's own long-range sensor arrays. This has been accomplished without firing a single shot or making any hostile moves. Council member Thaxos's scales had shifted to a deep violet that indicated extreme distress. "Tactical control. What exactly does that mean in practical terms?" Dr. Chen answered while reviewing data on her tablet. "It means that if we chose to do so, we could shut down interstellar commerce, disrupt communications between Council worlds, and blind your military intelligence networks. This would require no hostile action, simply the activation of systems that are already in place and have been for years." The implications were staggering. Humanity had positioned itself to cripple galactic civilization without declaring war, without even making threats. They had simply achieved the capability to do so and were now politely informing the Council of this reality. But it was Jake Morrison's next statement that truly demonstrated the hopelessness of the Council's position. "Of course, the tactical situation is only part of the consideration," he said conversationally. "Perhaps more relevant is the political situation that has developed over the past few hours since our previous meeting." The main displays around the chamber activated, showing communication feeds from across the galaxy. What the Council saw made several representatives physically stagger in their seats or equivalent resting positions. 17 major civilizations had formally withdrawn from the Galactic Council. 63 minor species had declared neutrality and requested humanitarian protection from human forces. The Veltar Confederation had announced a strategic alliance with humanity, and the Drac merchant guilds had suspended all commercial operations with remaining Council worlds. "In the past 6 hours," Jake continued, "the Galactic Council has lost 78% of its member species and 86% of its economic base. I should mention that this exodus was not encouraged by humanity. It appears to be a spontaneous response to the revelation of our actual capabilities." The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates frantically communicated with their home governments, many discovering for the first time that their own species had already abandoned the Council. The carefully maintained order of galactic civilization was collapsing in real time, and there seemed to be nothing the remaining Council members could do to stop it. Supreme Chancellor Krell's massive form trembled with rage and desperation. "This is exactly the kind of destabilization that galactic law was designed to prevent. Your species is destroying a peace that has lasted for over 2 millennia. Admiral Torres set down her device and looked directly at the Chancellor. "With respect, Chancellor, you're describing a peace maintained through fear and the threat of overwhelming retaliation. What we're offering is something fundamentally different." "And what exactly are you offering?" demanded Council Member Veltar, whose crystalline form was now pulsing with violent energy fluctuations that suggested barely contained fury. Jake Morrison stood and walked to the center of the chamber, his movement causing several Praetorian guards to shift nervously. As he reached the speaking position, something extraordinary happened. Every defensive system in the chamber powered down simultaneously. The energy barriers collapsed, the guard positions went dark, and even the emergency lighting dimmed to normal levels. It was as if the most secure facility in galactic space had suddenly decided that the human representatives posed no threat whatsoever, or perhaps that resistance was simply futile. "What we're offering," Jake said, his voice now carrying clearly to every corner of the vast chamber without any technological amplification, is a new model of galactic governance, one based on cooperation rather than intimidation, mutual benefit rather than enforced compliance through superior firepower. General Hayes activated another display showing detailed economic projections and resource distribution models. Under the current council system, 81% of galactic wealth flows to 18 major civilizations, while over 300 minor species exist in various states of economic dependency. Humanity's proposal would redistribute resources more equitably while increasing overall galactic prosperity by approximately 600%. The numbers were stunning, but several council members were more focused on the fact that humanity apparently had more detailed economic data about the galaxy than the council's own treasury departments and financial oversight committees. Dr. Chen took over the presentation, showing technological advancement projections and development timelines. More importantly, humanity is prepared to share advanced technologies that would accelerate the development of all galactic civilizations. Medical advances that could extend lifespans by centuries, energy systems that would make resource scarcity obsolete, transportation technology that would reduce interstellar travel time by 95%. Council member Thaxos leaned forward, his scales shifting to a more hopeful green. You're describing technological advances that could transform galactic civilization completely. But why would humanity share such overwhelming advantages? Admiral Torres smiled, and for the first time since the session began, her expression carried genuine warmth. Because, Council member Thaxos, humanity learned something important during our first decades in space. The greatest security comes not from being the strongest, but from ensuring that everyone around you has a genuine stake in your continued success. Jake walked closer to the council's platform, and several representatives noticed that the chamber's ancient security systems, safeguards that had protected the council for thousands of years, were not just ignoring his approach, but seemed to be actively facilitating it. The current galactic system requires the council to maintain superiority through force, he explained. This creates an inherent instability. There will always be emerging civilizations that eventually challenge that supremacy. Humanity's proposal creates stability through interdependence and mutual prosperity. But at what cost? Chancellor Krell demanded. You're asking the galaxy to abandon a proven system for an untested experiment based on the promises of a species that has spent decades systematically deceiving us. The accusation hung in the air for a moment before General Hayes responded with devastating precision. Chancellor, humanity never deceived the Galactic Council. We simply allowed you to make assumptions that weren't accurate. Every technology transfer, every treaty, every diplomatic exchange was conducted in complete honesty. The fault lies not in our deception, but in your fundamental lack of curiosity about what we might be capable of achieving. As if to emphasize the point, the chamber's displays activated once more, showing historical records of every interaction between humanity and the Council. The documentation was exhaustive and damning, yet clear. The Galactic Council's emergency war session convened in the deepest levels of the Judgment Station, in chambers that hadn't been used for over 800 years. The massive oval table was carved from a single piece of quantum-stabilized neutronium, surrounded by holographic displays showing the military assets of the remaining major powers that hadn't yet abandoned the Council. Fleet Admiral Korath of the Thex Dominion, whose species had commanded respect throughout the galaxy for their tactical brilliance, stared at the tactical displays with growing disbelief. The numbers simply don't make sense, he growled, his chitinous mandibles clicking with agitation. No species could deploy this many vessels while remaining undetected for over a century. Defense Minister Calyx of the Hegemony nodded agreement, her crystalline features refracting the room's dim lighting into prismatic patterns. Our intelligence networks are the most advanced in the galaxy. If humanity possessed even a fraction of these capabilities, we would have detected them decades ago through our monitoring systems. Supreme Chancellor Krell's massive form dominated one end of the table, his energy patterns writhing with barely controlled fury. Yet the evidence is undeniable before our eyes. 31 of our monitoring stations have gone dark in the past 8 hours. Human vessels are maintaining position around 57 of our core worlds. Either this is the most elaborate deception in galactic history, or we have been catastrophically blind to humanity's actual capabilities. General Wextar of the Confederation leaned forward, accessing the tactical displays with her neural interface. I've run probability analyses on 24 different combat scenarios. Even assuming our intelligence estimates are grossly incorrect, and humanity possesses 3 times the military force we've observed, combined council fleets should achieve victory with acceptable losses. The war planning continued for hours, with each military leader contributing expertise from their species' particular strengths. The Theks were masters of space combat tactics, the hegemony specialized in siege warfare, and the Confederation had perfected rapid deployment strategies. Together they represented the accumulated military wisdom of civilizations that had conquered stars when humanity was still confined to a single world. But as the planning session progressed, disturbing reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy with increasing frequency. The Canthari Republic, the Council's strongest ally for over 3 centuries, had formally declared neutrality and was requesting human protection for their commercial vessels. The Veltar Confederation had not only confirmed their alliance with humanity, but was actively providing them with access to the galaxy's most advanced shipyards. Most shocking of all, the Zephyrian Empire, whose military might rival that of any council member, had announced they were evaluating new diplomatic opportunities and had withdrawn their fleets to defensive positions around their home systems. We're fighting a war that's already over before it begins, observed Strategic Coordinator Yenth, her insectoid features twitching with nervous energy. Half the galaxy has switched sides before the first shot has been fired. Admiral Korath's response carried the desperate edge of a career military officer watching his entire worldview collapse. Then we make sure the first shot counts decisively. Human confidence in their technological superiority makes them vulnerable to unexpected tactics. If we can inflict significant early losses, demonstrate that they can be defeated, we might convince the neutral systems to reconsider their positions. The plan that emerged from the emergency session was audacious in its scope and desperate in its conception. Rather than engaging human forces directly, the Council would launch simultaneous strikes against 3 of humanity's hidden shipyards, using long-range weapons deployed from the farthest edges of the galaxy. The attacks would be coordinated with propaganda broadcasts designed to show that human vessels could be destroyed and their installations eliminated. It was a strategy born of desperation, but it represented the combined military expertise of 7 major civilizations and the resources of over 200 smaller allied species. If executed properly, it might provide enough of a psychological victory to stabilize the crumbling galactic order. But as the Council's warfleet prepared for deployment, they remained unaware of the conversation taking place aboard the human command vessel, positioned just outside their sensor range, invisible to even their most advanced detection systems. The Council's war planning is proceeding exactly as our models predicted, Admiral Torres reported, reviewing data streams that showed real-time intelligence from within the Council's most secure facilities. Fleet Admiral Korath is advocating for strikes against the Vega Station, the Proxima shipyards, and the Kepler manufacturing complex. Their targeting data is actually quite accurate for those installations. General Hayes nodded approvingly. Korath has an excellent military mind. Under different circumstances, he would have been a valuable ally in our expansion efforts. Dr. Chen, are the target installations prepared according to protocol? Lisa looked up from her analysis tablet. All 3 facilities have been reconfigured according to Protocol Omega-7. External appearance remains unchanged, but internal structures have been completely modified. The installations will provide exactly the kind of spectacular destruction the Council is hoping to achieve, Jake. Morrison studied the tactical displays showing Council fleet movements with the calm attention of someone reviewing a chess game where he already knew every move until checkmate. And our actual shipyards remain operational? Remain completely invisible and fully operational, Admiral Torres confirmed. The Council's targeting data is accurate for installations that haven't existed for the past 2 years. They're preparing to attack elaborate decoys while our real manufacturing capacity continues expansion at 18 times the galactic average. The sophistication of humanity's deception was staggering. They had anticipated not just the Council's tactical response, but their psychological needs as well. The Council required a victory, something to prove that humanity could be defeated and the old order restored. Humanity was prepared to provide exactly that victory, while ensuring it was completely meaningless. But the conversation aboard the human command vessel revealed an even more disturbing truth about humanity's preparation and foresight. The predictive models have been accurate, to within 3%, Dr. Chen noted, scrolling through data that showed not just current events, but projections extending months into the future. Council psychology, tactical responses, even individual decision-making patterns among key leaders. We've been modeling this exact scenario for over 60 years. Jake set down his data pad and looked out at the stars visible through the command center's transparent aluminum viewports. 60 years of preparation for a 24-hour ultimatum. It's almost anticlimactic when the actual moment finally arrives. General Hayes activated a holographic display, showing human assets throughout the galaxy. Assets that far exceeded even what they had revealed to the Council during their demonstration. The real question is whether the Council will be wise enough to accept our offer after their attack fails, or whether pride will drive them to escalate the conflict further. Pride, Admiral Torres said with absolute certainty. Admiral Korath is too good a tactician to believe that losing 3 installations represents a meaningful victory. But he's also too proud to admit that his entire career has been based on fundamentally flawed assumptions about galactic military balance. He'll recommend escalation. As if summoned by her prediction, the human command vessel's communication systems activated. The message was brief, but exactly what they had expected. The Galactic Council was demanding humanity's unconditional surrender within 4 hours, or face the full military might of the remaining Council worlds. Jake Morrison read the ultimatum with the mild interest of someone reviewing a document whose contents he had known for years. Dr. Chen, please transmit our standard response. Lisa activated the communication array and spoke in the same conversational tone she might use to discuss lunch plans. This is Dr. Lisa Chen of the Terran Diplomatic Corps, responding to the Galactic Council's ultimatum. Humanity appreciates the Council's position, but must respectfully decline. We look forward to continuing negotiations after your demonstration has concluded. The message was transmitted on all frequencies, ensuring that every military unit in the sector received it simultaneously. The casual dismissal of the galaxy's most powerful military threat was exactly the kind of psychological warfare that humanity had perfected over decades of preparation. But it was Jake Morrison's final order that demonstrated just how thoroughly humanity had anticipated every aspect of the Council's response. Admiral Torres, please signal all human vessels to maintain defensive positions only. No aggressive action is to be taken regardless of provocation. When the Council's attacks begin, our forces are to respond with humanitarian aid to any damaged installations and rescue operations for any casualties. The strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. Humanity would allow the Council to achieve their meaningless victory, while demonstrating absolute confidence in their own superiority. The Council's attack commenced exactly when human strategic projections had predicted it would. 3 coordinated strikes hit the supposedly critical installations at Vega Station, Proxima Shipyards, and Kepler Manufacturing Complex. The explosions were spectacular, visible from several light-years away and generating the kind of devastating energy signatures that suggested massive industrial facilities had been completely destroyed. Fleet. Admiral Korath watched the tactical displays from the bridge of his flagship, allowing himself a moment of grim satisfaction as the targeting data confirmed successful hits on all 3 objectives. Signal all Council forces, he ordered. Phase 1 complete. Humanity's primary manufacturing capability has been eliminated. But even as he spoke, Admiral Korath noticed something that made his chitinous mandibles click with unease. The expected secondary explosions from stored materials and fuel reserves weren't occurring. The installations had exploded, but they had exploded alone, as if they contained nothing but the basic structures themselves. Within minutes, his concern transformed into horror as human vessels began appearing throughout the attack zones, not to counterattack or seek revenge, but to conduct rescue operations for the minimal casualties and begin cleanup efforts for the debris. They moved with the calm efficiency of emergency responders, rather than the fury of a military force seeking retaliation. Dr. Chen's voice carried clearly across all communication frequencies as she coordinated the humanitarian response. This is Terran Emergency Services requesting immediate medical assistance for any injured personnel in the affected areas. Human medical vessels are standing by to provide aid regardless of species or political allegiance. The psychological impact was devastating. Rather than appearing wounded or enraged by the attacks, humanity was responding with the kind of organized compassion that made the Council's military action appear petty and vindictive. It was exactly the response that human behavioral psychologists had predicted would be most damaging to Council, morale, and galactic public opinion, but the true scope of humanity's preparation became apparent when Admiral Torres activated the communication arrays aboard every human vessel simultaneously. Instead of a military broadcast or propaganda statement, what transmitted across the galaxy was a complete record of the Council's war planning session. Every strategic discussion, every tactical decision, every classified military assessment was broadcast in its entirety to every civilization in galactic space. The Council's own words revealed the desperation, fear, and fundamental military weakness that had driven their decision to attack civilian installations rather than engage human forces directly. General Hayes's voice accompanied the broadcasts, providing calm military analysis of the Council's tactics. As galactic observers can see from the Council's own strategic discussions, their attack was designed not to achieve military objectives, but to create a psychological victory through the destruction of civilian infrastructure. This represents a fundamental abandonment of the principles of civilized warfare that have governed galactic conflict for millennia. The revelation was devastating. Species throughout the galaxy could hear their supposed leaders discussing the acceptability of civilian casualties, the necessity of using terror tactics, and the admission that they could not defeat humanity through legitimate military engagement. The broadcasts accomplished more to undermine Council authority than any military victory could have achieved. Supreme Chancellor Krell's desperate response came within hours. Emergency communications from the Council demanded an immediate ceasefire and called for neutral species to mediate the conflict. But the damage to their credibility was complete, and the offers of mediation came not from established galactic powers, but from species that had already aligned themselves with humanity. Jake Morrison's response was broadcast from the human command vessel, his image transmitted to every major population center throughout the galaxy. When he spoke, it was not with the voice of a military commander, but with the authority of someone announcing the inevitable. "Citizens of the galaxy," he began, his tone carrying neither triumph nor vindictiveness but a simple statement of reality. For over 150 years, humanity has observed the governance of galactic civilization under the Council system. We have watched as resources were concentrated among a few powerful species, while hundreds of others struggled for basic necessities. We have seen conflicts perpetuated by those who profited from instability. We have witnessed the suppression of technological advancement to maintain political control. The human installations that had been destroyed were already being rebuilt, not by the slow industrial processes the galaxy was familiar with, but by advanced manufacturing techniques that completed construction in hours rather than years. The message was clear. Humanity's industrial capacity was so vast that the Council's most successful attack had been little more than an inconvenience. Today, the galaxy has a choice, Jake continued. Continue under a system that maintains order through fear and scarcity, or join humanity in building a civilization based on abundance and cooperation. We offer not conquest but partnership, not submission, but collaboration in creating a future that benefits all species. As he spoke, the displays throughout galactic space showed the reality of humanity's proposal. Advanced medical technology that could extend lifespans across all species. Energy systems that would make resource conflicts obsolete. Transportation networks that would connect the galaxy in ways previously impossible. Educational systems that would accelerate the development of every civilization. But it was Dr. Chen's presentation of the economic data that truly demonstrated the scope of humanity's vision. Under the proposed galactic partnership, average living standards for all species would improve by approximately 800% within 50 years. Technological advancement would accelerate by factors that our models suggest could lead to post-scarcity civilization within 2 centuries. The numbers were staggering, but they were backed by detailed projections and technological demonstrations that made them credible. Humanity wasn't promising an impossible utopia. They were offering a realistic path to prosperity that their own development had already proven was achievable. The response from across the galaxy was immediate and overwhelming. Species that had remained neutral declared their support for humanity's proposal. Several of the Council's own member civilizations announced they were withdrawing to evaluate new opportunities for galactic partnership. Most significantly, the Zephyrian Empire, whose military might had been one of the Council's greatest assets, formally declared their alliance with humanity and offered to serve as mediators for any Council species wishing to join the new galactic order. Within 48 hours of the Council's failed attack, the political transformation of the galaxy was complete. The Galactic Council controlled less than 10% of galactic space and represented fewer than 30 minor species. Their military had been revealed as inadequate, their economic base had collapsed, and their political authority had been transferred to a new alliance led by humanity, but governed by principles of consensus and mutual benefit. Fleet Admiral Korath, whose tactical brilliance had earned him respect throughout the galaxy, submitted his resignation to the Council and requested a meeting with human military commanders. His message was brief but telling. "I have spent my career studying warfare. I would like to spend my remaining years studying peace." The final meeting between the human delegation and the remnants of the Galactic Council took place not in the Grand Judgment Chamber, but in a simple conference room aboard a neutral vessel. The symbolism was intentional. This was not a trial or negotiation, but a discussion between equals about how to move forward. Supreme Chancellor Krell, his massive form seeming somehow diminished despite his unchanged size, addressed the humans with a tone that carried centuries of weariness. "You have achieved something that military historians will study for millennia. A complete transformation of galactic civilization, accomplished through superior preparation rather than superior firepower. I find myself curious about one thing. How long have you been planning this specific scenario?" Jake Morrison consulted a small datapad before responding. The initial strategic framework was developed 437 years ago, during humanity's first decade of spaceflight. The specific tactical elements were refined continuously, but the basic approach was decided before we ever made contact with galactic civilization. The revelation sent a final shock through the assembled Council members. Humanity had been preparing for galactic governance since before they knew there was a galaxy to govern. Their entire approach to space exploration, technological development, and social evolution had been designed around the assumption that they would eventually need to take responsibility for civilizations they had never met, as the formal documents establishing the new galactic partnership were signed. Jake Morrison made one final observation that would be remembered by historians for millennia to come. The galaxy spent so much time watching humanity for signs that we might become a threat, that you never considered the possibility that we might become salvation.